streaming? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance here today in the audience at our council meeting on this great day, the 22nd of February 2022. It's a great day for me. It's the birth of my first child. A great day for me. Ladies and gentlemen, this public meeting is being recorded to improve access to this meeting for our community. The recording will be published and will be retained by council in accordance with council's legal obligations. If you have submitted a question, your name and question will be recorded. Would you please stand for the opening prayer and the acknowledgement of country? The prayer I'll do first. I'll do the acknowledgement of country first. I acknowledge we are hosting this meeting from the lands of the Bangarang people. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we all work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this meeting. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Victoria. Opening prayer. Almighty God, we humbly ask thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people for whom we serve. Amen. Amen. Thank you everybody for being here. All councillors are present and our corporate management team are all present to hear, help us answer any questions. We have public question time at the end, of which we will go to general questions and questions in relation to items down here we will answer at the time during the episode. I'd like to hand over to a presentation of reports of council reports, and I'll quickly transfer over to Jack Herry, Councillor Jack Herry, to talk for 1 moment.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Look, I'll just say a quick couple of words just regarding the sitting during the prayer, just to preempt any sense of it being an affront or disrespect, because that's definitely not the intention. It's just not a belief system that I identify with myself. So I've thought about it a lot since we were starting for Acknowledgement of Country, which is a recent occurrence. And often it's caught me on the fly, but I gave it a bit more thought and just thought it was unusual for me to kind of give the inappropriate impression that that is something that plays a big role in my deliberations in this room and my decision making. So I definitely don't begrudge anyone for bringing their personal life experiences into this room, and in fact I expect it. And I think the diversity that we have as a group is kind of what makes us pretty robust and a good group of decision makers. It's just, for me, it's policy, legislation, rural city of Wangaratta plans, and of course engaging and getting out there with the community. That's the main part of my decision making, not a particular religion or God. So just wanted to say a few words about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herrick. We'll now move into officer reports. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a very quick agenda. Well, there's only 2 main items on this agenda, and it may go on for a little bit because of those items, but we'll go straight to him. Sorry, I purposely did that. Sorry, I'll go back to item number 7 there, confirmation of the minutes of the previous council meeting. Councillor Benson, would you like to move that recommendation? Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Patrick, sorry. Any discussion? Anybody? No? All safe and secure. All those in favour of accepting the minutes from the previous meeting? The recommendation is carried. So I'll now go down to officers' reports and we'll go straight to infrastructure services. So we've got 15.1 is C33938 Mackie Street Drainage Reconstruction, and I'll hand over to Director Marcus Goonan.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. The purpose of this report is presented to Council to provide details on the tender evaluation and recommendations for the award of the contract for drainage reconstruction works on Mackie Street between Rowan and Templeton Streets. The project has been identified to address community concerns received in relation to drainage issues, vehicle safety relating to the intersection of Mackie and Rowan Street. This project will revitalise the streetscape, helping to connect the CBD, formalise car parking, footpaths and encourage additional parking within close proximity to the CBD, and also improve safety for pedestrians. The recommendation of this project is to award the contract for Mackie Street Reconstruction, supporting on excavation, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the documents when available, and disclose the contract price.
Thank you, Director Gooden. Are there any questions from the gallery in relation to this item? No, thank you. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Herry, and a seconder. Councillor Benson. Councillor Herry, did you want to talk on this project?
Just a few words. Thank you, Mayor Rees. Just to say that it's going to provide a number of amenity improvements and functionality and safety improvements down there on both sides of Ryan Street. Both sides of Ryan Street, on Mackie Street, the improvements will be. So, and it's also coming under budget, definitely being something that's been a benefit.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors like to talk on the recommendation? Councillor Bussell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is very interesting because I don't think there's been any work done in this corner of Wangaratta in my entire lifetime, so I think it's long overdue. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. Councillor Herry, do you want to finish off as the mover? Yep. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is carried. Director Goonan, could you release the figure, please?
Yes, it's $526,180.60 GST exclusive.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next item. So, development services, and I'll introduce item 16.1 and Stephen Swart. This is a planning application, pin application 21/198, 21 to 23 Templeton Street, Wangaratta, development of residential buildings for social housing, demolition of buildings, and a partial waiver of car parking requirements. Thank you, Director Swart.
Thank you. As you said, this item is about a planning permit application seeking to redevelop the land at 21 to 23 Templeton Street, Wangaratta, to construct a 4-storey social housing complex split over 3 separate buildings. The land is currently being used for social housing purposes, and the application is to completely demolish the existing buildings on site, which comprises of 16 single-storey housing units, and to build 44 new housing units on that site. The application was referred to the CFA and also the Northeast Water, and they did not object to the application, subject to conditions and comments. Notice of the application was also given in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act, and as a result we received 13 objections and some letters of support as well. The application, objections and referral responses have been considered and assessed against the relevant provisions of the Wangaratta Planning Scheme and the Planning and Environment Act, and the officer's recommendation is that council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit subject to the conditions that are contained in attachment 1.
Thank you, Director. Before I ask questions to the gallery, there is a question submitted by Julie Harper, and there's a 5-part question here that I will read, and Director Swart, are you happy to answer? So, request a decision. Further to my objection on this proposal, I would like to submit 5 questions to be discussed at the council meeting on the 22nd of the 2nd, 2022. Question 1. What view does council take on the extra parking requirements, not only for residents, but emergency services, daily nursing visits, Meals on Wheels? What plans do the council have in the future for extended all-day parking and hourly meter parking along Templeton Street?
Thank you. So as part of this application, council considered data that indicate that social housing residents in Wangaratta have a lower car ownership rate than those in non-social housing areas. And officers have formed a view that the amount of car parking proposed is sufficient given the social housing context of the use. And note that there are 20 car parks proposed for the development compared to the current number of car parks on site, which is only 2. The parking arrangements for timing restrictions along Templeton Street are not proposed to be changed as part of this proposal.
Thank you, Director. Question number 2, considering the project will include 3-bedroom apartments to house families, where on the property will there be a secure designated play area for children?
Thank you again. The site is located close to the centre of town and within walking distance of a range of services and opportunities, including King George Gardens. The applicant has opted not to provide a playground as part of this proposal, and there's no mandatory requirement within the planning scheme for council to require them to do so.
Question number 3, with the project being 4 stories, has there been any consideration for mobility scooter parking at the project?
The layout of the development has accounted for all abilities access. Individual units will be wide enough to allow for mobility scooters to enter them. Disability access will also be considered under the building code as part of a future building permit application process.
Question 4, it has been reported that there is excessive pressure on the current Wangaratta sewerage system with a halt for the next 5 years on subdivisions. Will this development have any negative effect to the current system?
Yeah, I should say to start with, there's no halt on subdivisions for the next 5 years. There's certainly some issues around specifically sewerage provision in some parts of Wangaratta, including our new growth areas. When it comes to this application, the application was referred off to Northeast Water, as you'll recall that I mentioned before. One of the reasons we do that is because the ability to service this proposal will need to be assessed by that authority. Northeast Water came back, they did not have objection to the proposal, and if approved, the applicant will need to continue to work with Northeast Water to service the development appropriately.
And question number 5, with significant increased traffic along the stretch of the street in the past few years, also used as a rat run by large heavy vehicles to bypass the city, the development will again increase the congestion with the extra number of residents and the services they use. How does the council plan to elevate the danger to pedestrian crossing the road, accessing commercial businesses, school children using the stretch of road and the visitors?
Thank you. A traffic impact assessment was submitted as part of the application, and the proposed development is not expected to have any significant impacts on road safety in the area. The application, including the traffic impact assessment, was considered by Council's technical services team, and no road safety concerns were raised. Some aspects of the proposal may contribute to improved safety conditions, such as the waste collection arrangements proposed.
Thank you, Director. Are there any other questions from the floor, from the gallery here, in relation to this development?
Yeah, what about 25 Templeton Street next door? What about the privacy to that building? It's obviously 4 stories high, there's obviously going to be shade loss, there's going to be people looking out of windows, and I'm the owner of the property, so I'd just like to know what you're doing towards that.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, because, sorry, could you just state your name?
Damien McCormack.
Thanks, Damien.
Yes, so the overlooking aspect of that has certainly be considered as part of this application. There are some permit conditions proposed as part of this to try and help manage that and improve that even further. As the application stands, it complies with the planning scheme, but there is a recognition that some minor improvements in that space through permit conditions could improve that even further.
Thank you. Any further questions, Damien?
No.
Thanks, mate. Any other questions from the gallery? No? Well, thank you. I'll now put the recommendation for a mover from council to move it, to put it on the table to be discussed by council. So, mover Councillor Jack Herry to move, and a seconder, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Thank you. Council Jack, as being the mover, you have the first right to talk on the recommendation, and also the right to reply to any talk from council at the end. So over to you, Jack.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Yeah, it's quite a significant development for Wangaratta. we don't have many buildings that are of that stature and 4 stories in that area. But as the report states, with respect to the planning decision, and we have to keep in mind and remember it is a planning decision at the end of the day, there is no exclusion of that sort of structure in this area, and in fact there's a lot of impetus and support behind increase and densification and infill and making better use of the space, the limited space that we do have. So with respect, as a planning matter and considered in context of the planning guidelines we have and the local planning policy and the Wangaratta planning scheme, I think it's a pretty robust proposal that stacks up and ticks quite a lot of boxes. Obviously it's providing a much needed form of housing and increasing diversity of options for our community, and we have to remember particularly people that are vulnerable members of our community and don't stand a lot of chances in the broader housing market, especially not the broader housing market as it currently operates, with prices as they are and it being completely locked up. The design, I think, is, I mean, there's no denying that it will change the amenity of the area and feel and look of that area. It's a significant structure. However, I feel that the design is considered and the materials and aesthetic of the building, you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I feel like it has gone to a fair degree to ensure that it fits in and pays due respect to some of the other features of that mixed commercial one zone. But I guess stepping out of strictly the planning decision context, I mean, housing in general is something that is a problem. I alluded to that a few moments ago. And I think we do need to shift the focus of housing and shift it away from being a mechanism or a tool that is this individual ownership thing, which can be used as a tool and leveraged in an open market and kind of drive a bit more of the stock into a different sort of housing, which gets back to the core of what housing is, which is about people having a roof over their head at the end of the day, and everyone deserves a roof over their head. Absolutely, no doubt about it. So there are a few things that planning can control, and that's in increasing diversity and density of housing, and some controls around amenity and car parking has been a big one. But I think coming back to the question that was posed with respect to the nature of the buildings and congestion on the street, I think the beauty of this is that it's going to be the sort of development which is not placing a huge emphasis on cars and people owning cars, and it's got 40, I believe there's 40 bicycle parking spaces. That's twice as many bicycle parking spaces as there are car spaces, and a lot of the people that may eventually occupy this may not be car owners, or may realise that there's no need to own a car when you live in such close proximity to so many services, you know, and that's really the idea of it, supporting vulnerable people, putting them in close proximity.
How are we going on time there, Jack?
Oh, yeah, we're going pretty good. So I'll just finish on my last point there. There was a little bit, a minority of the community, I guess, bring out that notion. It came up in one of the submissions, the notion that there will be undesirable people. And I think we just need to remember that these are people, and while there may be undesirable behaviours, ultimately you'll get that anywhere with various neighbours. And I just think it's a dangerous road to travel where we would have dialogue, community dialogue that is so seated in prejudice and really, in a sense, will set up any future residents there, you know, for failure if they come in thinking that they're seen and regarded as undesirable people in the community. So just to finish on a word of caution there. Thank you, Mayor Rees.
Thank you, Councillor Harry. Would any other councillor like to talk? Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also going to support planning application. Like Councillor Herry, I acknowledge the fact that this is a very big development. It's a new development to Wangaratta. You know, we haven't got anything quite like this, but it's the way of the future in terms of housing, and I think we need to support that. I'm certainly heartened by the fact that it's being run by a charity, Uniting Care, and that within the permit conditions, you know, we have made allowance for, you know, the maintenance and the, you know, to maintain the amenity of the building, which I think is important. The fact that people require social housing is a big issue in our community, and we can't turn our backs on that. And I think, you know, there are going to be a diverse range of people living in the units, and I think it's something that we as a community should provide our support to. And this is only a beginning of, you know, social housing in our community, and it's something that I think council has a role now with the planning scheme to get it off the ground. What transpires with the building and the people that will live there depends on us as a community into the future. So I see it as something that we need to support. Our planning scheme allows it, and I'm certainly going to give it a thumbs up.
Councillor Grant, thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I acknowledge, as with Councillor Grant and Councillor Herry, that yes, whilst some elements of the design are perplexing for some citizens, the overall outcome is essential to ensure that we have a welcoming and safe community and that we're lifting our fellow citizens up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Any other councillors? No. I'll just quickly note before you go, Councillor Buswell, I just wanted to note the Victorian Government are super urgent to give money away at the moment to social housing group, to the point that in the next couple of years they're going to be charging major developers coming out of Melbourne, Ballarat, Bendigo, and I think Geelong, a certain percentage of developments to try and raise in excess of $20 million per year to put into social housing. I spoke to former Mayor Kevin Mack yesterday for an hour over the road here, and had coffee with him talking about social housing developments and how far behind the New South Wales government are. And one of the main things that came out of this discussion, that everyone deserves the safety and the dignity of a home. So with that, I'll leave it. Councillor Bustle.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I want to thank all the objectors for taking the time to put their thoughts forward. I also want to thank the supporters of the project. You always get much better outcomes where you listen to the people and get input. Any compassionate community needs to have housing for everybody, affordable housing. I think that's very important. Wangaratta is a very, very compassionate community. Looking at this from a planning point of view, there is just no reason to object to this. You know, being a fair-minded person, there's just nothing there that you can object to in a planning matter. So I'll certainly support it.
Thank you. Councillor Herry, as the mover, would you like to finish up?
I'll briefly just touch on a point that Councillor Grant, I think, first raised, but there are permit conditions, indeed, as Director Swart mentioned, and it is going to be run and operated by Uniting Care, and their office is just over the back of this development in extremely close proximity, so that they're in our town. You know, they're part of our local community. And just perhaps to the questioner, Damien, I can definitely appreciate your concerns being a direct neighbour, but I do reassure you that Uniting Care have been very conversational and agreeable in negotiations and discussions, and that those permit conditions will come into place. So I do encourage you to, you know, keep in contact with them and the rural city of Wangaratta. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harriet. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is carried. Ladies and that is sort of the end of our official part of the council meeting. We now move into public question time. If you don't want to stay here for public question time, which is just general questions on any matter, and I do have a number of questions to read out in relation to different issues, you do not need to stay if you don't want to, but you are welcome to stay. So, my first public question will be, is from Caroline Trevelyan on behalf of the Millerware Hall and Park Committee. What is the intention of the rural city of Wangaratta for the future of the Millerware Hall and Park? Dear councillors, I'm writing to you on behalf of the Millerware Hall and Park Committee to ascertain what council plans are for the future of our hall and park. We are currently fundraising for much needed refurbishment of the hall to improve the functionality, accessibility, ambience and safety for user groups. Our hard-working volunteers have and are donating significant time into the fundraising effort, and many long-serving members would like to see significant improvements in the internal quality of the building. What support and funds can we expect for the Millerware Hall and Park from council? I might refer this over to Director Goonan for your insight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council work with all of our community committees, helping them maintain what are very important assets. Council makes a yearly contribution to the Millerware Hall Committee of approximately $1,500 per year to assist with maintenance works. On top of this year, there is also a $40,000 grant to complete works on the main hall ceiling, lights, fans and bifolding doors. In Council's long-term financial plan, additional funding has been allocated in the upcoming 3 financial years to the value of approximately $150,000 via building renewal works. These works include restumping, removal of asbestos walls, ceilings, new light fans, repairing cracks in external walls. Obviously, the $150,000 funding is still subject to the normal annual budget process.
Thank you, Director. Are there any other questions in relation to the Millerware Hall that someone would like to raise? Please, Anne Dudson, if you could stand. Can you come over the microphone over here, Anne? Oh, your voice is loud enough, you can stand there. Just state your name, Anne, and...
Yep, so Anne Dunstan, Tarawinji. We manage the units next door to the Millerware Hall, and they're the really only public access toilets to that Millerware area, and we're finding with the increase of use of caravans, etc., caravans are getting bigger, and the cars don't anticipate that they can't do the full turning circle within that hall area, so they're actually using the gravel footpath and exiting on the unit driveway next door, which is chewing up the only version of a footpath that the children use to get to school. So a bollard system probably at the start of the hall area at the end of the unit to also a bollard at the unit area would be fantastic to see, which would be a rural city responsibility, not a hall committee responsibility to put in, because you've just done a fantastic job of upgrading some of the parking outside the hotel on the left-hand side, but the right-hand side corridor still needs to be addressed as well. So is there the ability to have some bollards put into that footpath to prevent people driving along the footpath?
Thanks, Anne. Marcus, any thoughts, or is it a situation you need to go and have a look and see what we should look at?
Yeah, we're certainly happy to go and have a look at that. I don't know the particular situation, but yeah, certainly happy to get out there. And thanks for the comments on the parking. It looks good as well.
Yeah, it does. It looks fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Any other questions in relation to this issue on the wall? Nope. Yes, Madam, did you want to say something?
Yes, I can. I'm
Good.
Carolyn Trippow, and I sent the
Thanks,
letter
Carolyn.
on behalf of the hall. I find that very interesting. Like we look after the hall, but we've had no communication that those things are in play. We find that we, as a committee, contribute a lot of our own time to run the facility and are currently fundraising to try and endeavour to do something about the internal look of the hall. Quite a few other halls within our community have been refurbished, and we seem to have missed that pot. buildable public toilet facility is completely, well, not useless, undersupplies the volume of people that access that toilet. That's something that really needs to be addressed out there. The poor people across the road say people pull up and are just peeing in the garden because there's one public toilet there for people to access. And I'm not sure how many of you drive through Millerware on a weekend and there's bumper to bumper caravans parked along the road, and the facilities out there just aren't keeping up with the tourists that are coming through. And the hall, we've been running markets there on a weekend, bi-monthly or trying to over the last couple of years, to build our presence, but we don't have the supporting infrastructure around us. The parking is a huge issue, the toilet facilities, all of that on top of the internals for our hall. But I appreciate the information that we do have funds coming, so thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Any further response? And thanks for talking to us all here at council, and we'll note everything that was said there. Thank you. So if there's nothing further on the Millerware Hall, we'll move on to a question submitted by Paula Griffiths. Considering there is a proposal by ARTC for the new massive bridge within the Glenrowan Heritage Precinct, the precinct is of national heritage significance and great economic value to this region's economy. Has the rural city of Wangaratta put forward any alternative bridge locations, suggestions to the ARTC? If so, what are they, and what was the reason behind the decision not to proceed with them? Thank you, Director Swart.
Thank you. The Inland Rail project seeks to increase clearances along the railway line to enable the safe passage of double-stack freight trains. Council has worked closely with the Australian Rail Track Corporation, or the ARTC, on proposals for sites at Glenrowan and Wangaratta since the start of the project. As part of this process, the ARTC has considered a range of options for Glenrowan, including track lowering, a new bridge at Quarry Road, a hybrid of a new bridge at Quarry Road and track lowering, a new level crossing at Beaconsfield Parade, and a new bridge immediately adjacent to the existing bridge, which is currently the preferred solution. Some of these options considered were in response to feedback from council. A new bridge immediately adjacent to the existing bridge was determined to be the preferred solution due to achieving better outcomes from a heritage point of view, reduced impact on native vegetation and also properties. Heritage Victoria also have provided in-principle support for this preferred solution. Council considered its position relating to this project in April last year and resolved to support in principle the ARTC's proposal for replacement of the existing Beaconsfield Parade Bridge with a new bridge directly to the west of the existing bridge.
Thank you, Director. I'll also have a question that's submitted by Joanne Griffith. It's a very lengthy dossier on some bits and pieces that have gone on, but I'll just read a little bit of it and then go to the main question around this. The question is about the Heritage Impact Statement, which is a HIS provided by the rural city of Wangaratta to the Heritage Victoria in support of its application for the proposed tower development in the Lions Park, Glenrowan Heritage Precinct, certified by the rural city of Wangaratta as true and correct and justifying proposed siting of the tower within the Lions Park by claiming this would enable improved views of the heritage sites from the tower. Question relates to, does the council acknowledge that the alleged improved views, including in its application as justification for siting of the tower, were unsurveyed, are in fact misleading, and in multiple instances do not exist and cannot be obtained, and that it has ceased construction that was stated to commence on the 15th of February, Monday, because it is now aware that the rural city of application was in fact misleading because of the above discrepancies in the approval there is therefore apparently void at law. Stephen.
Thank you for the question. A full survey of the project site was undertaken as part of the permit process for the project. The heritage impact statement that's referred to in that question assessed the impact of the heritage place based on the proposal. The siting of the building will provide improved views from a viewing platform of the significant locations across the site. The aim of the interpretive centre and interpretation within it is to help visitors to understand the context and significance of events on that site. The location of the building supports an understanding of the relationship between the sites, whether they currently exist in their original form or not. The interpretation will be further enhanced by technology and storytelling within the interpretation centre that will further allow visitors to envision the events that took place within the precinct. The heritage impact statement assessed the impact of the proposal on the heritage place and found that it had a minor impact only. The proposed development is consistent with the Glenrowan master plan, which is referred to in the question, and the landscape management plan, which is also referred to in the question. And the development has been approved by Heritage Victoria, considering all of these matters. Council has met all state and federal requirements in obtaining the necessary permit for the project. We will continue to ensure that all requirements under that permit are met as we proceed to the construction phase of that project.
Thank you, Director. I'll also read out a question from Brian Fox. Would Council consider shortening the hours of paid parking time in the CBD? I am suggesting paid time begins at 10 AM and finishes at 4 PM. Of course, there is many variables the Council may consider, such as leaving the starting times as is and have finishing times at 3 PM. I realise this will need to be an agreement of the operations of the multi-deck car park, but they could be in favour too. Gentlemen, I am asking you, and sorry, gentlemen over here, the two gentlemen over here, gentlemen, I am offering the suggestion, as never in my lifetime in Wangaratta have I seen streets in the CBD so deserted of pedestrians. I'm also suggesting that the rule of shopkeepers displaying their goods in the centre of the footpath be abandoned so that the traders can use their personality and good judgment to stimulate sales. I would like to see these changes implemented immediately, as our retailers are in need of very possible assistance that can be given by Council ASAP. I'd like to reply to these questions from Brian. Council works closely with all the local businesses in relation to parking meters and footpath trading requirements. Just in relation to shortening the hours of parking will not necessarily ensure that pedestrians are walking the streets of Wangaratta or frequenting local businesses. Paid parking is used as a traffic management tool to ensure that spaces closer to shops are available for shoppers to access the services and facilities they need. Reducing paid parking times may have the opposite effect, allowing people to park longer in those spaces closer to the shops and then not available for use. I'll just go to the footpath trading. The Council have been operating a permit system for footpath trading for many years. The permit system is important as to ensure pedestrian safety and amenity of the CBD. Without the permit system, items may end up being put in areas that obstructs the footpath and creates hazards hampering pedestrian movement. These questions have been asked and answered on numerous occasions, to Brian Fox, and this will be the last time that they will be asked and answered to Brian Fox. So our trading of goods out on the footpath was discussed to make the movement and the ability for visually impaired people who use their cane to tap along the street frontage of shops to know where the access to doorways, etc. is. And that's why this was, to my knowledge, a Victorian state guideline, was to move goods. It's not stopping people from having goods out the front, but there's certain distances out from shops that they have to use. Again, Mr. Fox is aware of that and has been spoken to about it on many occasions. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the gallery?
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment?
Please, Councillor Grant.
To Mr. Fox, just to remind him that there aren't just gentlemen around the table at council. So we are also two women who are involved in decision making and do that on a regular basis.
And very important decision makers. Thank you, Councillor Grant, Councillor Fitzpatrick, noted. women here tonight. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the gallery? Please, David. Please just step forward, David, and state your name. I think that is David under that mask.
Can I take the mask off?
Yeah, please. That would make it clearer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. My name is David Moroney. I'm the Secretary of the Wangaratta Rail Action Group. On the 11th of May 2021, on behalf of the group and 353 supporters, I delivered a package of documents and covering letter to the front desk of this building, addressed to council as a whole regarding the construction of a pedestrian subway at the Wangaratta Railway Station. On the 13th of October 2021, on behalf of the Wangaratta Rail Action Group and 353 supporters, I again delivered several packages to the front desk of this building. Addressed to each councillor regarding the construction of the pedestrian subway tunnel at the Wangaratta Railway Station. If I may, I have two questions. One, respectfully we ask, why have we not received the courtesy of the acknowledgement of receipt of these documents covering letters by council and councillors? And two, has the council signed a mutual non-disclosure agreement with the Australian Rail Track Corporation? Thank you.
Thank you, David. Would anyone like to speak on this? Councillor McGrath? Oh, sorry. CEO McGrath.
Thank you, Mayor Rees, and thanks, David, for the question. I'll have to take your first part of that question on notice and just go back and have a look in our system to make sure we've got a record of receiving those packages. I'm sure you say you delivered them to council, I'm sure you did, but I just need to go back and have a look at what actually happened to those. So my apologies in advance if you've had no formal response to that. We'll certainly go back and track that down. In relation to the agreements, there are agreements in place with the ARTC that do protect the confidentiality of some of what's proposed. That applies only to very limited elements of the project, and largely all of the information is in the public eye and has been part of various consultation processes by ARTC.
Thank you.
David, I do remember receiving your documents, and we haven't replied, or I haven't replied specifically due to the fact that we don't have any firm recommendation on what is going on there. We've seen concept designs for an underground rail pass, but is that the end project that it's going to be? Well, to my knowledge, no.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any other questions from the gallery? Okay. Well, thanks everybody for attending tonight's meeting. We on today, the 22nd of February 2022. We look forward to attending normal council meetings. So at this stage, I'll declare our meeting closed and